Hello and welcome back. So a bit of a different video today. Yes, I'm wearing yet another hat. Do you like it? Yes, it still has the tags on. I don't take the tags off things because I'm weird. But let's move on from that. Does it have made my face look fat? Anyway, what are we here to talk about today? Well, we are here to talk about the James Bond franchise, and I'm going to give you my top picks for the top 5, top worst, and rate the James Bonds. So here we go. So let's start off with the top 5 Bond films. Now, this is just my opinion. You may think differently. Who knows? But let's start off with number 5. In the number 5, you've got Dr. No. It's the original Bond. We are discounting the original Casino Royale because 1, most people don't remember it. 2, hardly anyone's seen it. And 3, it was just woefully bad. So, anyway, discounting that, this is where it all really kicks off. Sean Connery in Dr. No, the start of the Bond era. And it has to be in the top 5 because yes, you're watching now, it's an old film, but it's still watchable, it's still a good film, and after all, it's the first time we hear him go, James Bond. What more could you want? Absolutely nothing. Cracking little film. Definitely has to be in the top 5. In at number 4, the modern version of Casino Royale. This is Daniel Craig's first outing as Bond, and let's face it, he was a pretty decent Bond, but we'll find out where he comes on my list later on. This is a film, I mean, Casino Royale is a difficult film. It's one of those things that probably really shouldn't work, but they made it work, and it came out quite good. It was a pretty decent film, and, you know, for those factors and the fact you've got an Aston Martin in it, it's got all the things you need in it, it's a good Bond film, and I think it deserves to be in the top 5. So, it's in the top 5. In a number 3, Live and Let Die. Now, Roger Moore wasn't everybody's favourite Bond, but I quite liked him. He was a decent Bond. He had a good run. He did some, he did it well. He did it all right. He did us proud. He didn't do a bad job. And I think out of all the films he did, Live and Let Die is by far his best. Despite the fact it has all those snakes in it. I don't like snakes. They're not nice. But anyway, skipping over that, glossing over that, this is a good film. This is probably, like I say, this is his best film, and he deserves to have a film in the top 5. So that's why we've got Live and Let Die here. It has most of the things you need, and it's just a pretty decent film. All round, decent Bond film. In at number 2, I've gone with Diamonds Are Forever. This is Connery's last outing as Bond, and I think as kind of a farewell, it was a pretty decent film. Yeah, there were perhaps a couple of little issues with it, but overall it wasn't a bad film. Dame Shirley Bassey did the theme tune, and let's face it, she can knock those out of the park. Baseball reference, look at that, aren't we getting trendy? It's, and it's not a bad film, it's a good film, it's Connery's last outing, it's just got to be in the top 5. But it's not good enough to be number 1, because it's good, but it's not great. But by far, the greatest Bond film of all time has to be Goldfinger. You've got a great villain, a great car, really great gadgets. I mean, who doesn't like an ejector seat? You've got the womanizing, suave Bond against Honor Blackman playing Pussy Galore, who is kind of swept off her feet, but she's also, as well as being sort of a swoony, falling for Bond, sort of at the end, she's also got that bit of strong ass-kicking woman in her as well. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got the whole package. It's got a good villain. It's got a great car. It's got a great Bond. It's got a great leading lady who is both weak at the knees but strong as well. It's got everything you want, and it's just, ooh, yeah, Bond. That's the way to do it. That's how you make a Bond film, and that's why it's got to be number 1. You may disagree, and that's fine, because, opinions are personal. You may disagree. You're entitled to disagree. If you do disagree, well, you're wrong, but that's beside the point. So let's move swiftly on to the 5 worst Bond films. Now, this could be controversial. Let's clear the throat. Get serious now. So, in at number 5, Quantum of Solace. This is here not because it's necessarily a bad film, but it could have been a much, much better film. I just feel, and I can't put my finger on it, but there was just something, I wanted more. There was something missing from it. It wasn't as good as it should have been. That's not to say it's not bad, and Daniel Craig is very good in it. It just needed something else in it. I don't really know what. I can't tell you what it's missing. I'm not sure myself, but it's just missing something, and that's why it's in at number 5. In at number 4, we've got License to Kill. Now, License to Kill is a film that it more feels like a mishmash of films. It doesn't. It's not terrible, but it just doesn't gel. It feels, I don't know, just like it doesn't fit together properly. It's like trying to get a square and a circle to fit together. It's like kind of weird and doesn't work, but you don't know why it doesn't work. And that's, yeah, it just, itchy nose. I don't know. It just, I don't know. For me, there's just something not quite right about it. Anyway, let's move on to number 3. Number 3, we have a Pierce Brosnan one, and this is Die Another Day. Now, you could forgive the slightly weaker storyline if it wasn't for the terrible, terrible CGI. But I think the most disappointing thing about this film is it's the first time that we really see James Bond under pressure. Right at the very start, he's been captured, he's being tortured. They could have done so much more with it, and the story kind of just went off a cliff. It just didn't really work. Some of the CGI in it is just, even for the time, not very good. Someone had the right idea of putting Madonna in the film. I mean, again, no disrespect to Madonna, but she's not exactly really known for her acting prowess, is she? And the whole thing kind of just didn't work, and it could have been that they could have done so much more with it. The elements were there, but they just didn't come together. So yeah. Now, in at number 2 is George Lazenby's only outing as Bond on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, this was, up until recently anyway, until I get to my last one, which I've probably just given away now, was the worst Bond film. And that is just, again, because it has really good casting in it. I mean, I think unfairly Lazenby gets a lot of the blame for the film not being good, and I don't think it's down to him. I think it's a combination of things. I don't think the story quite worked, and while they've got a really good cast, I don't think they necessarily seem to gel together. So there's lots of issues with this film, and don't get me wrong, when it comes on, I watch it, I enjoy watching it, it's fine, but it just, again, I mean, this one, I really can't put my finger on it, but it just doesn't work, really. It's one of those things where, when it's on at Christmas, you'll watch it, you'll enjoy it, probably because you're half drunk, and it's fine. But other than that, it's not one you're going to go out of your way to, watch unless you're having a James Bond marathon. Anyway, so what has beaten it to the number 1 spot? Well, and this is where you may disagree. No Time to Die. Daniel Craig's last outing as Bond. Now, I suppose it depends sort of, I mean, everyone's obsessed with reboots nowadays, and reboots are often terrible, which is part of the problem. You only have to look at some of the ones that have been done recently, where, and even good reboots sometimes aren't, but that's the difference. We'll do another video on reboots, but I'm not a fan of reboots necessarily. But anyway, even if you can get past the fact that they killed Bond off, you see, now my view of Bond is, yes, it's been played by different actors, but it's really the same person, it's the same character going all the way through. He's James Bond, he's the suave, womanizing, sophisticated super spy that everybody loves. And that's what makes Bond. And in this, not only did they kill him off, which pointless, it just wasn't very well written. It was partly written by that Phoebe Waller-Bridge-Smith, whatever her name is, can't stand it. I know a lot of people like her, and maybe by that Fleabag she wrote, I thought it was terrible. I hate her writing, her acting isn't much better. But, yeah, not great. The story just didn't work for me. And the fact that they turned him into this mushy, carey, feely, it's just for me, it just didn't work at all. It's just not watchable. I've seen it once. I have no interest in ever watching it again because it was just an absolute pile of crap, basically. And that's a shame because Daniel Craig was a very good Bond. And for this to be the final film he was in is bitterly, bitterly disappointing because it was just trash. You may disagree. I know I've saw plenty of people saying, oh yeah, but it wasn't like a normal Bond film. That's what made it so good. No, that's what makes it so bad. A Bond film is supposed to have certain things in it. That's why it's a Bond film. That's why people go and watch it. That's why Bond fans go and watch it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point. But anyway. You may agree. You may disagree. That's my take on it. So let's move on to ranking our Bonds and see where they all come. So, which James Bond was best? Well, in at number 5, we've got George Lazenby. I still feel he was kind of hard done to. Maybe had he been given a second chance, who knows, it may have come off. It may not, I don't know. There was something that wasn't working, whether it was him or not, it's difficult to say. In at number 4, Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan's Bond wasn't too bad. He was suave. He wasn't as hard hitting as perhaps some of the others have been, but he was alright. It wasn't a bad Bond. Now, I've got a joy in third place because I've got Roger Moore, who brought that suave but comedic and kind of more relaxed Bond. And I quite like Roger Moore as Bond. I liked him. He was alright. And Timothy Dalton. Now, I think Timothy Dalton could have done more films. I think Dalton's problem was the 2 films that he did do weren't great. But I don't think that was down to him. I think actually he was quite a good... He was kind of like a more of a Daniel Craig Bond, kind of a bit more edgy, a bit more, and I think it did work. But I think, unfortunately for him, the stories weren't quite there. They needed more. Anyway, let's come to number 2 and number 1. Now, as soon as I tell you who number 2 is, you're going to know who number 1 is. But there we go. In at number 2, we've got Daniel Craig. Now, when Daniel Craig was first announced as going to be the Bond, I wasn't sure about this. I was like, I'm not sure about this. Who's this fella? But to be fair, he did a good job. And he was kind of a bit more of an edgier Bond. Again, so that was good. I liked him. He did a good job. It was a very good one. And, with the exception of the last film, most of the films were okay. Yeah, like I said, Quantum of Solace is in that list of the worst 5, but it's still not a terrible film. So yeah, Daniel Craig, he did a good job. So who's at number 1? Well, it can only be one person, Sean Connery. Sean Connery is, I think, still the ultimate Bond. He just had that persona about him. You think of Bond, you think of Sean Connery. Probably obviously younger people don't because they may not be as familiar with those Bonds, but go back and watch them all because he just was the I can't say the word. My words have gone completely. But he was just Bond. He was Bond. Sean Connery was Bond, and that's the thing. And that's why, for me, Sean Connery is the number 1 James Bond. What do you think? You may agree, you may disagree. Who knows? Come back for more.
Jet plane headed up to the sky, spread wings and the clouds getting